Okay, and I'm just gonna show you the merge request because in the end, I wanted us to be able to comment on each line. And so the issue description wasn't really working anymore. And so there is this document. And the latest version of the document is here. And I'm going to make it larger. And I'll walk you through it. So we were trying to solve the problem of what agents are we going to offer to the user when they want to create a workspace. And there are two parts. One is just what agents are we going to offer to the user? That's the user part. And then there is the admin part. How are you going to configure the agents in a way that the right projects have access to the right agents? And so what we are going to be focusing on trying to make this schema work. Like there is going to be a configuration project. That's how it's called when you have the agent project. When you have a project where you edit some cluster agents in it, it's called configuration project in documentation. So you have that, and independently you can have any group and subgroups projects that would have access to the cluster through that particular agent. Now, one thing I didn't put here, there is possibility to just add a single project. Doesn't even have to be a group-wise addition. So that's something that I'm going to talk to as well. So there are two parts to it. There is interim solution, and that's for the internal closed beta, because the complete solution that I'm going to describe a little bit later is a little bit more complex. It will require us to do some implementation, database migrations, UI also. And so not to be blocked, there is a way, a shortcut that we can take to, postpone having the complete solution and still be able to open it for internal testing or to select few customers. And the interim solution is to use the existing GraphQL query. I'll describe it a little bit lower, what's the implementation of the GraphQL query, but like simply put, the GraphQL query gives you, if you are asking for a group, give me all agents. It just traverses for that group, and all the subgroup gets all projects and checked whether those projects have agents configured. So it gets the what we call configuration projects all the way throughout the hierarchy, and it offers you all of them. So that has obvious disadvantage of there is no way to filter like whether the remote development module is on in the agent or not. So in this internal closed beta, in that interim solution, we need to manually ensure that all the agents that we are offering within that group or within the project has the module enabled. Otherwise, there is going to be some runtime error when user tries to create a workspace in an agent that doesn't support it. The query gives us two options. We can get agents for a group and agents for a project. And this is always the configuration project, and the group will traverse this to find configuration projects. So it's very limiting, but for our internal testing, it might not be end of the world. I would prefer probably to go with the setting up a remote development enabled group. That would mean some subgroup somewhere, and all the projects within that group can create workspaces. That would be my option. The drawback of it is that projects like gitlab.com, like our handbook or any other project, won't have the access. The way how we could work around it would be to clone the projects there. So you can still work with the project clone.
Yeah. I mean, if you fork the project, right? If you fork the project, then you would be able to still use it.
Sorry, that was the word that I was looking for. Not clone, fork it. Yes. Or we could go with this route and make it project-centric, which would mean that we need to add agent to each project that we want to support where we want to support remote development. which, like, just thinking about adding a cluster agent to the main GitLab project sounds like there is going to be so much red tape that, given the fact that this is just interim solution that we are going to try to surpass as quickly as possible, this probably doesn't make sense. But these are the two options. Here I'm trying to illustrate that if you are going to add to that group an agent with remote module disabled, there is going to be some problem. So that's the group-centric option, and this is the project-centric option. All right, so does that make sense?
Not fully. So I understand the group-centric option. So that's how it works today, kind of, except for the enable disable flag. Yes. Right? So you can query for all agents which are present in the group, yes. And that's what we show on the UI, right?
That's exactly the spike behavior. This is what we've done so far.
Yeah, exactly. Get agents in a project. So does this only for that particular project, does it show you the agents, or does it walk up to the group and then show you all the agents for that group?
Only for the particular agents. Only for a particular project. So this is to be expected to be called on a configuration project, and it will list all the agents that are configured within that project. So that's like, here I try to illustrate it in this picture where we would add GitLab agents, my agent config to the www.gitlab.com project. And then that project would both configure the agent and use it for remote development. So it's very limiting this, how we could use this. The flags the GraphQL queries were originally designed for some security dashboards that were trying to find all the agents defined in that group or project.
Got it. I mean, I like the first option, honestly, so.
Cool. Then we are in agreement there. I like it too.
How do you restrict a user to, like, is there some sort of, at the group level, to create a workspace, do you need some sort of user role? Because
you need to be developer within that group.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a little bit different from what I'm going to suggest in the complete solution. But here, when you are calling the GraphQL query for a group or for a project, you need to be a developer. You have to have a developer role in that group or project.
Okay, otherwise it won't show you the list of agents.
Otherwise it won't show you the agents, yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yes. In the interim solution, there wouldn't be any administration a screen showing up the agents. Like, easy way how to find out which agents are there would be just like going to any project in the group and trying to create a workspace. That would
show you
what all the agents that are there. But that's the interim solution. So what's the complete solution? The complete solution is working similarly to, now there is a feature called CI access. I'll describe it a little bit lower, but what it really means, there is this configuration in the config YAML for each agent where you can give access to groups and projects to this agent. And when there is a change, same as we are going to be doing it with the domain, something in Rails listens on it and creates a database, records that are like people call it lookup tables. It's just a many-to-many relationship between agents and groups or projects. So there is already
basically we're just setting configuration to say which groups or which projects have access to this agent. And that way you can really go across groups and across subgroups and everything. So
yes.
Okay.
So it would be, sorry, go.
Sorry, coming back to the first solution, we're just going back to the immediate group or subgroup, right? Like you're just going up one level up
in the interim solution.
Yeah.
Yes. Only we would implement it that we will take parent group of the project that you are in.
Yeah.
And because we could go to the root, but that means that if we will, if we were to, like, that way we wouldn't be able to limit the the agents to the remote development enabled agents. So it needs to be the smallest scope possible, not the widest one.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I mean, that's fine. That makes sense.
Whereas here, I would assume that we will go for the widest scope, same as we are now doing it with the CI runners. When you define a CI runner for GitLab, GitLab org group, that runner is going to be available in all the projects and subgroups within that group. And I would expect that the same way we will work with the complete solution.
That makes sense to me. Like, I think what this means is that it'll work similar to the CI runner, that it would automatically, when you change this, we will change some tables so that in correspondence, when you're creating a new workspace, then we show the right set of agents, right? Based on
Correct.
your
as far as I was able to project all the business rules, it would be identical to the CI runners.
Yeah, makes sense.
And right, so once the configuration, there are two conditions that have to be met. User has to have a developer access to that project where they try to create a workspace. And then the agent is configured to either give access to that project or one of its parents groups. Those are the only two conditions. The tricky thing there is that, not tricky, but like one thing that's not obvious is that the user doesn't have to have developer access to the group. So let's imagine that you have a project with workspaces in GitLab or group, and you manually add a member to this project. And the member has the developer access to only the project, not the group. They will still be able to reuse the GitLab org group agents to create workspaces. And that's the same way as runners behave. Like pretty much when you are defining the resources for the group, you are not saying that only people who are members of the group have access to those resources. What you are saying is that all the projects within that group can use the resources. And then all the developers, like all people with developer access to those projects can use those resources. So that's the only thing that it wasn't obvious. I tested that the CI runners work the same. We'll have to implement some UI screens showing the configuration. The screens look like this on the instance level. I can probably just make it larger here instead of. So like this on instance level, that's in the admin area. Then for each group, you see in the CI like list of runners for that group. And here you see, and that's the interesting part, and I'm gonna actually make it larger. Here you see runners. I'm saying runners and agents interchangeable because they will really work the same in this regard. But you see the runners that are shared, that's for instance level. Group runners, you can disable both the shared and the group runners, which is important. And I added it to our document as one of the, be smaller, as one of the lovable features. I think that this is going to be eventually important to be able to disable the shared agents when you have a specific project that has some specific requirements for resources or access to network or whatnot, that you would want to disable everything that's being inherited and set up your own for that particular project.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so when I'm saying implementing UI, I pinged Julia on this issue. I have no idea where would we put it, but I would assume that we are going to create these three screens. And also I mentioned that the instance agents is also a lovable feature, like something that we would do later. I don't think that with the design, with the lookup tables and with this, there could be just another item saying that it's a shared agent.
Or star.
Or like star or instance.
Instead
of groups, project, there could be just like a instance Boolean flag here.
Yeah, I mean, we need when we go to gitlab.com, I think, definitely, right? That will be something
that has to, yes. Once we start offering the runners as a service, or sorry, not runners, workspaces as a service, then we definitely need to have the instance-wide agents, but not, I don't see it needed for the initial few releases. So we can outscope it, hopefully. All right, so this is the business rules. This is what I asked Eric and Julia to kind of review, get their stamp of approval. I also asked Mikhail to review the interim solution, whether there are any red flags. Like, we know that this is pretty heavy query.
Yep.
Because like if we were doing it on some large root group like GitLab org, it would take forever because it's really traversing. Like it's doing I think I don't know whether I mentioned the query somewhere. I didn't, but it's a big query that's doing how is it called in Postgres when you are like hopping to the sub resources, like transitive. I don't know what exactly, but like it's a query that goes through all the subgroups.
Yeah, the plan will probably be large because it has to go through every group and subgroup underneath that, and then try to figure out how to.
Yeah, the Postgres has some kind of SQL keyword that does that for you, so it's like not too crazy the SQL query, but yeah, it would take a long time. So that's we know that, but when you have only one subgroup somewhere, and that subgroup has it's a flat structure where you have only child projects, I don't think it's any concern for the interim solution. So the technical details I just mentioned with examples from where in the code how the CI access works.
What would have been nice is like if the configure team had given this as a generic feature where you could specify generically what access is needed at any sort of module level, right? That would have been nice. So then you can check the.
I have it here somewhere in the tricky parts of the implementation. Like I'm not sure whether I understood it correctly, but what I was thinking, like now there is the group authorization, and even though it's called generically group authorization, that's like the lookup table or the entity that joins together the agent and a project or a group.
You could have another. I see. I was thinking of exactly the same thing as a type saying, "Hey, which feature is this really for?"
Exactly, because I don't think that, like when we have a look at the code, you know, I don't see us creating another like two sets of relationships for another group authorization and project authorization, and renaming these to group CI authorization project. It just seems like we should be able to do unify this. And
describing it is that I think we need a type attribute on that table just to indicate which project is asking for this, right?
I agree.
Probably the code in the REST API code, which actually does this, right? Which inserts the records, then could also be made generic to say, okay, which section, and then use that section name as the type or something like that.
I know that you have much better overview of that particular part because you are now working on the domain, right? I didn't really I don't know exactly how. I was trying to go through the code and find out how we react to the changes in the config, but I don't have it. I have the links to the code somewhere here, but I didn't load it in my short-term memory, so I'm not going to be a good conversation partner in figuring out how the details of that would go. But since for me, good news was that it's already implemented, so it's doable, and there is already pattern that we should follow. And my hope would be that we can reuse the current entities and just extend them a little bit.
I think so. I think the tables are generically named as well, so they can be used for anything.
Yeah, maybe that was the intention all along. All right, so then there is some documentation on this CI access and user access user documentation for them, and I described the query behavior originally before talking to Mikhail and before realizing that it's like this GraphQL query and the Finder don't support checking by feature like module enabled in the agent. I thought that this is what we could reuse. So I spent a lot of time investigating exactly how it works. I described it here. A long story short is that it supports the interim solution. It doesn't support the complete solution. And the implementation details for just the refresh authorization service. This is how it extracts from the YAML. It extracts the authorization for CI and creates the entities. That's as far as I got with looking through the code.
Yeah,
tricky parts. The GraphQL query is a little bit. What made it hard for me to get to understand the code was that all of those things are generic. Like the GraphQL query, even though it's meant for security dashboards, it's named generically. Even in the comments, unless you blame the code, you don't find what's it used for. Same with the group authorization, but I got to the bottom of it, and yeah.
I think we could optimize like the GraphQL query by flattening out at a certain level, right? What we can do is have like a level at each. So basically, when you're creating a project, it just has to quickly look up that table to see which agents are possible instead of traversing the whole tree to figure out. Like if I'm navigating the screen and it has to keep traversing the tree, it seems like that could be a more complicated query versus if we just, whenever a new agent is added, we automatically just put in the authorizations table and then just look that up, right? So
I agree. I think that we might either have to create a new GraphQL endpoint, or we might have to somehow extend this to like list all of the agents. But I think we will have to create a new endpoint because this one's looking for the configuration projects, and our use case is going to be completely independent of the configuration projects. It's going to be just about the mapping about the group authorization and project authorization. So I think we'll have to create a new. I didn't get as far as enumerating the implementation issues, but I think we'll have to create a new GraphQL endpoint. And the last bit, there is just I know now exactly how CI works. I described it here, but I was trying to figure out pretty much if there is any discrepancy between what we want from the agents with workspaces and CI runners, and I didn't find any. And that's done. That's
good to me. I mean, it looks good to me. Looks quite comprehensive. I think let's get Eric's buy-in in the first part, like the business rules that you and then we should be good. It works similar to the CI runner, which is great, I think.
For customers and for us.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I'm gonna stop the recording. If I'll